got, baby? One more? The boss wants one more.
Thank you, God, for almost this amazing day. Weeping greatly spirits of truth, not a blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is unnatural, which is infinite, which is I who have died, I'm alive again today. I who have died,
I thank you,
I'm alive again
for Moses' amazing
today. I who have died,
I thank you,
I'm alive again
for Moses' amazing
today. I've died,
I thank you,
I'm alive again
Moses' amazing
today. The birthday of life and love beats. The birthday of life and love beats. Birthday of life and love beats. The birthday of life and love beats. Birthday of life. Of life and love and peace. Birthday of life and love and peace. Birthday of life and love and peace.
How's your tasting, touching, hearing, singing, hearing lifted up from the know nothing. Human merely being doubt, unimaginable you.
Now the ears of my ears awake. Now the eyes of my eyes are open. Now the ears of my ears awake. Now the eyes of my eyes are open. I thank you, God, for almost this amazing day. For the living spirits of cheese and a blue dream of sky. I who have died am alive again today. I who have died am alive again today. I who have died,
I thank you,
am alive
God,
again
for Moses' amazing
have died,
I thank you,
am alive again
for Moses' amazing
today. This is the birthday of the sun.
This is the birthday of the sun. This is the birthday of the sun.
Good morning. Many people have asked, what is this thing? And this thing is whatever you need it to be. Maybe it's like a tomb. Maybe it's like a cocoon. But it's a symbol of whatever happens before Easter. Whatever that part of you in your life is that is sometimes dead, sometimes done. You know those parts of you where you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, recycled the T-shirt, sold it at a garage sale, used it as a cleaning rag. You've been there, you've done it for so long, and it feels like something in your life just feels stuck and it just won't change. Maybe this is a symbol of that. But whatever it is, the promise of the morning is that change can happen, and that even in the midst of those things in our lives that feel so dead, there seems no hope. There is hope. There is miracle. There is change. I invite you to stand and pray with me our Easter prayer. Holy One, in the midst of life, we often find ourselves stuck in tombs of our own making or of somehow our upbringing. Somehow in this moment, this morning, that may we gather and discover how it is that new life comes to those places in our own lives and in our community and in our world where resurrection is so sorely needed. This is the moment of resurrection. We give thanks. Amen.
I invite you to stay standing. We're going to sing this old traditional hymn and maybe a little bit differently. My life goes on in endless song above earth's lamentations. I hear the real, the far off hymn that is a new creation. The storm can shake my house with music ringing. It sounds and echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my emotions. I hear the truth in living, and though the darkness round me closes, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? In prison cell or dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Let's do that chorus one more time.
The storm that shake my inmost calm, but to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? Let's try that one more time. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? Thanks. Take a moment and greet folks with a little Easter peace greeting of peace.
This morning's reading is from Mark 16, verses 1 through 8. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid.
Church in the wild world, in the wild world, wild world. Oh, come to my church in the wild world, in the wild world, the wild. Underfoot as we go walking in the woods. You know it always does you good. Mother Nature's neighborhood. You know there's something only here. There's something that whispers in your ear. And all God's creatures live in fear. We're the only one that cries. We're the only one that cries. Come to my church in the wild wood, in the wild wood, where nothing is labeled as bad or good. In the wild wood. Sacred story in the stones, and feel a little magic in our bones. And walking in the woods, I start to see the miracles we are. We are full of mystery. These ivory aspen towers chatting with the breeze are clapping for the golden light in the trees, till the moon over the mountain leads a packing song. We don't have to know the hymn, we're gonna sing along. Church in the wild wood, in the wild wood, where nothing is labeled as bad or good. In the wild wood. Every single creature has some truth to portray. Even you and I may have provided things to say. We're brothers of the rocks, ooh, and we are sisters of the pine. Every atom in our bodies has been them a million times.
church in the wildwood, in the wildwood, where nothing is labeled as bad or good. In the wildwood, come to my church in the wildwood.
You know, the entire story of the Bible, it seems like it's everything in there is like this long history of people trying to learn. And God learning, too. I mean, there's points in the stories of the Hebrew Scriptures where God changes God's mind. It's almost like this whole thing has all been this long journey of learning. And in that kind of early story that we get in Genesis, you know that story of Adam and Eve and the taking of the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? You know that story, we always talk about the apple, you know, but we don't know what kind of fruit they were talking about back then. I don't think there were a lot of apple trees there at the time. But that image of the apple we still have in our minds with Eve taking that bite of that apple, you know, and going, wow, this is good stuff, Adam. Try some of this. Something about that kind of learning, growing consciousness was attractive to Eve, and it was attractive to Adam. And it meant that the journey had to begin, this journey away from what was kind of an innocence in the Garden of Eden. The way the story perhaps got changed for us was that all of that had to do with terrible sin. But the rabbis say that there was never that idea in the Jewish tradition, that this was not a story so much about sin, but about the kind of disobedience that happens for all of us in the journey to learn and become. There's something that we have to taste of, life. You know how that is in your life, don't you? It's almost like you knew how you were supposed to be. You knew how you were supposed to act. You knew how you were supposed to think. In fact, you knew exactly how you were supposed to even speak by the time you were 6. But that didn't mean that's what you did. Didn't we all have to kind of learn on our own, tasting of life, trying things out, seeing what was our life going to be about? Maybe it needed to be different from our parents. Maybe it needed to have a whole different set of values than the ones we had been ingesting from the time we were little. There's something about that in this story of this journey throughout the Bible where people continue to kind of struggle to try to figure out who they are and what's their place in the world and what's their life supposed to be about. You feel that sometimes, don't you? Well, you just kind of wonder, what am I supposed to be doing here? What am I supposed to be about? And am I learning the lessons that I am supposed to be learning? We've all tasted of that fruit, of the tree of duality, where we move out of our innocence into a place of amazing opportunity for growth. The challenge of our learning is intense, though. I recently read that there's some new experiments to help with learning. They are finding that not just those drugs, Ritalin and those kind of things, seem to help for sometimes. The Army is actually working with this new kind of helmet thing you put on, and it's got all these electrodes on it. It's just covered with electrodes, and they electronically stimulate your brain. And the reports that I have read are kind of amazing. What it actually says is that if they put this on, if they take someone out to the firing range to practice their target shooting, and, they'll gauge how well they shot. And then they put this helmet on with all this stimulation, and they learn much quicker. It totally accelerates learning. It's raising a lot of ethical issues, actually, because this new technology that we have in our world is going to be available for who? And does this create the opportunity for there to be a whole different kind of class of people who could afford the technology to be smart and learn faster than everyone else? Technology is already here. But what I found most interesting about the account of this new helmet, this electrical stimulation of the brain, that I found most interesting was that the person who put it on and was writing to kind of document what the experience was, said that what was most profound in putting on this helmet was that all of her self-doubt and fears went away. And all of a sudden, all the chattering in the background of her mind disappeared. And she said it was like the first time I ever really felt at peace. Electronic stimulation of the brain somehow created for her a way to silence all the nagging thoughts that were always going, all the little worries that were always happening, all of the kind of cacophony that had been in her head. And suddenly she was able to experience something that she could only describe as spiritual. She said the closest she had ever come to something like that was after a yoga class. In fact, she said a 2-hour yoga class. So next Sunday, we're going to start doing yoga in here. And maybe we should do that. It wouldn't be a bad idea. But I bring this story to your attention for a couple of reasons. I wonder if, like the reporter who wrote this article, we all don't have some places in our lives that feel just kind of not at peace. That we spend a lot of time struggling to just find some sense of calmness in that inner dialogue in our heads. I know I do sometimes. And I wonder if we all need one of those helmets. Or, maybe as an alternative, there's something actually that we might discover ourselves. I find in my own life, I often see myself repeating the same things over and over again, like I'm stuck in little patterns. I've also discovered that no matter how wondrous an experience is, how beautiful, how wondrous it is, the second time I have that experience, it's just not the same. And the 15th time I have it, it's pretty much just old news. Have you found that to be true? It seems to be one of the tricks of our brains. It's like our minds play tricks on us. We see beauty. We want to fall in love with this beauty. But the way our brains are made are to kind of automate. Automate, that's how we learn. I automate, and then I don't have to think about it anymore. And that works really good if you're trying to learn how to play the mandolin, because you automate some of the stuff and then you can think about something else. But when it comes to life and when it comes to living out of your heart and experiencing that sense of calm, joy, and wonder, when it comes to being able to live your life out of love, that kind of deadness, that happens in the learning process is a little problematic. You see, when we tasted of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil in our lives, we entered into a way of being that was about learning, but it was also about learning to take for granted. It was about learning something and then taking it for granted so that we could move on to the next thing. There was something about tasting of life for us that also robbed us sometimes of the joy of life, of the thrill of life, of the experience of the miracle of life. Think about it. Even your own existence, you take for granted, and I do too. And it's such a miracle. What would it be like to experience something of a resurrection of the heart when it comes to the experience of life, just even the gift of my life? But even more so, what would it be like to be able to look at a sunset and not be comparing it to every other sunset you ever saw? What would it be like to look in the eyes of your spouse after 30 years, or some of you more, and see a new creature? See, I think there's something about this Jesus thing. When he said things like, if you want to see the kingdom of heaven, you must become like a child. You see, there's something about life that will rob you of life if you don't take the time to pay attention to what's clouding your head and be still enough to become small enough to see your life again like a child and see it once again for the miracle it is. In the story, in the Garden of Eden, you know, there's not just one tree. In the story, it also says there's the tree of life also. In fact, God seems at some point in that story to talk to God's self, as if God had many personalities. And God says to God's self, we got to kick them out of the garden before they eat also of the tree of life and become like us. It has been suggested that Jesus, that his teachings, that his way was somewhat, or could be understood symbolically as the tree of life. In communion, we partake of that life. And the tree of life, I think, has fed me. I feel like in the words of Jesus, in the teachings of Jesus, I have found bread for the journey that has brought me back to a sense of resurrected life in my own heart, helping me push back against the busyness and the way that life seems to be often taken for granted, reminding me to find in every moment, in every person, in every place, that sense of the sacred miracle of what is. And for my own life as well. So we gather today and we partake together, not from the tree of duality, but the tree of Easter is the tree of life. And the tree of life is beyond duality. It invites us to an experience that isn't about trying to classify anything as good or bad or male or female. It's about having eyes like a child to experience the miracle of what is. What an amazing thing it is. Where's resurrection in your life today? Where is it that your heart longs to be reborn? Where is it that you could begin to see through the eyes of a child? I want to invite you to just close your eyes for a moment. And as we pray in silence, allow your heart to move in the directions of the places where love is needed. There may be 1,000 voices in the culture that want to tell you what to think. But right now, let love win out. Right now, there's so many different ways that you could have your heart and mind moved in some direction by a voice from the past, from a memory or a message. Instead, why not eat from the tree of life? Why not allow your soul to resurrect something of that child that was in you from the beginning, a child full of wonder and joy. This Easter, what would it be for us? What would it be for you to truly experience your own resurrection? Meister Eckhart once said, what difference does it make if Mary gave birth to the Christ in her life, in her time, if I don't give birth to the Christ in my life, in my time? St. Teresa said, Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks compassion on this world. Yours are the hands through which he wants to do good. Holy One, as we open our hearts once again to discover what it is that we are called to be and do, help us to discover how that light that shines in all things, that is you, shines in us. Amen.
Things are changing, rearranging to a new sex. It's a glorious day, glorious day. Smile upon your face, hey, don't you worry, don't you weep. The blessings raining down upon you are there for you to keep. There's a new Irish song, it's playing in your soul. Let it carry you away on a riff of diamonds in the rough. Things are changing, rearranging, getting up you on your way. It's a glorious day, glorious day, glorious day, glorious day, glorious day. It's a glorious day. things are changing, real changing. Hit a number on your head. It's a glorious day. It's a glorious day. It's a glorious day. It's a glorious day. Put a smile upon your face. Don't you love it, don't you weep. Say the blessings raining down upon you, they're there for you to keep. There's a new hour song playing in your soul. Let it carry you away, 'cause it's a glorious day. It's a glorious day. It's a glorious day. Glorious day. It's a glorious day. Glorious day. It's a glorious day. It's a glorious day.
Yes, it was a miracle getting the tree in here. I'm passing out some ribbons, and it's been our tradition. We did this once before, so it's a tradition to pass ribbons around. You could just pass that basket around and take a ribbon. And what we want to invite you to do is to use this ribbon in whatever way you want. If you want to tie it to the tree, you can do that. If you want to take it home with you and tie it to something that to you needs some resurrection. For instance, you might tie it to your cat. That's happened before. It's happened before. Someone tied it to their cat because her cat was dying. And sometimes people tie it to something that they have lost a sense of joy over, to remind them to look at it again with eyes like a child. I used to have a ribbon that was tied to me for a while. Several people tied ribbons to me because they needed to be reminded. Never mind. So I want you to be, be careful about when you tie it to someone. You might be saying, okay, I'm taking you for granted. But if someone ties it to you, just know that what they want you to know is that they want to value you. They want to see you through fresh eyes, through resurrection eyes, that see the sacredness in your person. So I invite you to take one of those, and we're going to sing a song that we wrote a couple of years ago called I'll Be the Seed of Change. Maybe another place you could take a ribbon and tie it would be to something where you see life needing to be revived. Maybe it's a place where there's hurting, suffering, injustice. Think about that too. We're going to sing this song, I'll Be the Seed of Change, and I think maybe we'll have a couple people kind of help. If you want to have a ribbon up on the thing, feel free to come up and tie a ribbon on. Tie one on. Okay.
I invite you to stand up too, and you can join along as we're singing this. Come on up and tie a ribbon, and if you have an offering, bring it forward at this time too. We have our offering basket here at the table and over here. Yeah. Heard the story of your sacrifice. I heard the words you spoke, they were so wise. Heard you came back from the grave to say nothing done in love that had never died.
Sing it with us.
I'll be the seed of change, buried in this ground, a witness to the world, turns power upside down. I'll be the tree of love, so easily cut down. I'll be the hope in the house of suffering. Easter that you see. The world has changed since you were here. Still we are fighting now, still we have tears. I'm picking up a cross of my own today. There'll be a resurrection in what I do and say. I'll be the seed of joy. I'll be the seed of change, buried in this ground, a witness to the world where power is upside down. I'll be the tree of love, so easily cut down. I'll be the promise of an early spring. I'll be the song of Easter that you sing.
Let's see that chorus one more time.
I'll be the seed of change, buried in this ground, a witness to the world where power is upside down. I'll be the tree of love, so easily cut down. I'll be the promise of an early spring. I'll be the song of Easter that you sing. I'll be the song of Easter that you sing.
Thanks.
Well, and we're going to, we'll be singing at the end as we usually do, and invite you to come. I know some of you didn't have time, but invite you to come forward and use these ladders as well while we're singing at the end.
Yeah, feel free to continue to tie them on. So there are many concerns in our world. There are many concerns within our community, and we kind of want to take a moment to just hold them close. A number of people in our community struggling with different kinds of illness and different kind of challenges. And so wherever you experience that in your life or people that you know, I invite you, if there's a particular name that you'd like to just call out for us to remember in prayer, would you do that now? Just call it out. Nolly, Lena, Eva, Tracy. Good. I'm not going to try to repeat them all. Any more? Good. Yeah. Good. Good. Let's just take each other's hands for a moment. We'll say a prayer. Holy One, like this tree, we need both roots and wings. We need a way to reach and learn and grow. But we also need to experience that just rooted sense of joy in life and being. Perhaps allowing us to just ground our identity in this sense of being your children. What a gift. What an amazing thing just to think of ourselves as a child of God, to have a life of all the other things that we worry about and strive for. What could even begin to equal that? So to be still, to know, and to know love is what we most have available to us at any moment. May we open our hearts to it. And from our own hearts, through the heart of this whole community, to all those that we've mentioned, we send that healing love. go with us this morning as your Easter people. May we see with new eyes. Amen.